Hello, welcome to Monstrosity's new video showing you how to make your own dreadlocks. This is actually me. Here I am backcombing or teasing my hair. They're both the same thing. I've just grabbed a section a little bit smaller than the dreadlock that I want to create, and here I am just backcombing it. Doing a fair bit of backcombing, and I notice I'm not really taking the comb out once I get stuck in there because you want really matted close together knots. So just making sure that the knots are really close together. You want a thick mat, and you'll notice that the hair starts one length and ends up about half of that length when I'm finished with it. And I'm just keeping on checking whether it's going to be nice and tight. Keep pulling it back down and just keep on matting until I haven't really got much left to mat, and you'll see at the end I've only got a little rat's tail worth hanging on to, and most of the dreadlock is roughly the same diameter. Okay, so once you've given yourself a nice big chunk of teased up backcombed hair, I like to do a bit of cycloning, which is what I call it. So grab the hair like a pencil or quite tightly near the root, press down onto the scalp and draw circles in clockwise or anti-clockwise directions. It doesn't really matter which way, as long as you're making that cyclone motion that seems to pull all sorts of little stray hairs, especially the short ones near the scalp, right into the base of the dreadlock. So that's something that you want to do when you're making new dreads, and also when you've got existing dreads to maintain them. I'm just here going to give it a bit of a palm roll, which is always good for dreads at any stage of their development. And so I'm showing you a couple of techniques here, but you don't have to do them exactly in this order. So here I am combing and teasing a bit more. And once I'm happy with the thickness of that dread, I'll just keep repeating these three motions, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, now the next step is to grab yourself a crochet hook. I love 0.75mm crochet hooks because they're too small to jam into your finger and get stuck in there, yet they're big enough to grab just enough hair and not too much. Be careful not to stick it under your fingernail because that will hurt. So what I'm doing here is poking the crochet hook through and grabbing just the hairs where the hook is hitting the outside of the hair. So usually what you do is you sort of squeeze it between your fingers because this makes a bit more tension and allows it to work better, but I'm just showing you here so you can see what action is happening, and you go in all kinds of random directions so that the hairs on the outside of the dread, the side that the hook is, they're getting pulled into the dread. You start off slow, and then once you get used to this you can actually go pretty quick. It's kind of like a sewing machine, and they're pulling all those stray hairs in, and they're basically sewing your hair together using your own hair. So a crochet hook is it's only about between 3 and 6 Aussie dollars. Pretty cheap, and it's really good to have one lying around because you can use it at any stage of your dreads development. Right, I'm going to show you also how to do an extension. So these are previous dreadlocks that used to be attached to my head. I chopped them off, I kept them, and now they're going back on my head. Okay, so I'm butting up the dreadlock with the part that I've just created on my head, quite tight, butting up it against it, and I'm also letting some of the stray hairs wrap around the other dreadlock. I've got my crochet hook, and I'm just pulling the hairs from my actual head through the base of the extension. And I'm pulling them right through. I'm not doing the technique where you just wiggle the crochet hook around and do the sort of sewing. This is actually pulling them right through. So I'm just adjusting it, making sure that the extension is butted up to the dreadlock. And I'm going to pull it through probably about 20 to 30 times, and I'm just turning it slowly as I do that to make sure that a lot of my own hair is through this extension. And you'll see that if I let go and it hangs on, then that's a good thing. So you can then give it a bit of a palm roll to mat it up a bit, let them get to know each other, and they love getting nice and close. And then I'll probably keep going, pull some of that hair back through the extension, and just keep repeating that, like I said, about 30 times until you're happy that that's where it's going to stay. And then when it is going to stay, then you can just use the previous technique as you see here, which is pulling the crochet hook in and out of the hair until it's nicely matted up. Now that's permanent, that's going to stay there if you've done it well. It'll probably take you a few goes to practice it. If you're not sure, you can sew a little bit of a cotton, that's a very similar colour to the hair, through both of the extension and the hair, and that will just reinforce it and make sure it stays. So give it a good palm roll, and there is an extension for you. So what you can also do when you've got loose hairs around the scalp or even on the length of the dreadlock is separate a bit with your finger, so you've got a little hole, and then poke the dreadlock through that, and it weaves that dreadlock so that the little bit of the hole wraps around the dreadlock and becomes something that tightens it up. Make sure you don't go halfway through and go half and half with the hair. You just have to choose a little bit of hair on one side and then wrap it through. So here's a little bit more on that topic. This is a technique where you can grab the stray hairs that tend to form on the outside of the dread. You can actually wrap them into a little ball and keep rolling them through themselves until you've got kind of like a strap on one side made of hair. I'm throwing a little bit of dread dust, or lock pepper as it also is called, on there, and then keep rolling that section until it becomes a tight little knot. And then what I'm going to do is poke the dreadlock through that. So similar to the last technique, but this is using hair on an already established dreadlock and using it to actually lock the dread nicely in place. So as you can see, there's no stray hairs around it now, and it's actually going around there and locking it in place very nicely. Give it a bit of a palm roll, that can't hurt. So this can be done multiple times along the dreadlock, just wherever you've got stray hairs. And I actually invented this technique, although there's probably other people who have figured it out as well. So yeah, here I am just repeating the same thing. Grab a bit of hair, make it into a knot, and then poke a hole through it until you've got a loop. And when that's nice and tight, you can just poke the dreadlock straight back through there. You can actually go through twice in the same direction if you find that it's quite a big loose loop. Otherwise, if it goes through once and it's nice and tight, that's all you need to do. So this is a really good technique to know as well. And I do all of these techniques on all of the people who come and see me at Monstrosity Dreadlocks. Depending on the type of hair you've got, you'll need all sorts of different techniques, but these are the main ones.